Welcome to the Projector Podcast. I'm Jeremy Glowacki, Editor-in-Chief of Projector Central. On this week's episode, which is brought to you by Elite Screens, Sammie Prescott joins us from Colorado Springs, where he is a QA software engineer, ISF Level 3 professional calibrator, and a frequent reviewer at Projector Central. Today, we will discuss Sammie's recent review of the Epson QL7000, the flagship model in Epson's relatively new Q series, which was designed to fill a gap in the market for high-lumen output projectors at a more accessible price point. The Q series was built with direct feedback from the luxury home-focused custom integration channel who wanted to meet the needs of multi-purpose rooms with higher ambient lighting. Hey, Sammie, thanks for joining us today. How are you doing there in Colorado Springs?
Thanks for having me again. I'm good. It's raining out. It just started not too long ago, but I'm nice and cozy at my house, so it's good.
There you go. Yeah. We had some beautiful warm weather here, and then it got to like 40 degrees yesterday and rainy, and it was just like, this is not May. I can't deal with this. But
right. Yeah.
You've been hard to track down for a podcast. We've had a couple of weeks go by here because you've been pretty busy. What have you been up to the last week or so?
Just normal work. And then I've also been traveling, doing some calibrations. So I was out of town for several days. And then I've also got some, equipment that I was testing. So I have multiple meters. So one of them is my CR100, which is my main one. And then I have, had a 1 nanometer Qualif. And I also had a CR250. And now I just recently got a CR300 meter for measurements. So trying to get all that stuff kind of squared away and rebuilding my travel case and whatnot. So I've just been busy.
Well, we appreciate you taking the time, and we're going to keep this one fairly on point. We don't have to go into the biographical background like we did the first time we chatted. I personally have been pretty busy as well. I got on the road. Timing is great for this because I was at the headquarters for Epson in the U.S. in Los Alamitos, California, just a couple weeks ago. And I got to experience this QL7000 in person for the first time since I saw it at CEDIA Expo last September. The Epson headquarters is a very impressive facility. It's brand new. It was built like in 2020, right at the beginning of COVID. They were super generous with their time with me, showing me all the home entertainment stuff, commercial projectors as well, and their extensive innovations in printing tech, which I didn't know would be part of my tour, but it was actually amazing and stuff that I just didn't know about, well beyond the stuff you see at like Office Depot. Like these are big, massive printers that print on clothing and things. I'll be posting a video of my tour soon, but Sammie is here to discuss the QL7000. So let's dive in. Like I said, it was announced and debuted at CEDIA in September, alongside its siblings, the QL3000 and QB1000. And the focus is on premium high-lumen performance. We're talking about a price point of $29,999, which is an accessible price point for the high lumen output, obviously not like your average consumer price point that would be, accessible necessarily, but for the premium, luxury market, it's definitely a good option. You gave it your editor's choice. What was it that really impressed you about this projector?
So the QL7000 it's in a very unique spot. To have a projector that's in the $30,000 price range it's actually really not uncommon. You can get multiple projectors that are either just slightly underneath that cost or slightly just above that cost within like the premium like home cinema market. The thing that's interesting about the QL, both the 3000 and the 7000, but in this instance the 7000, is that it is 10,000 lumens, where depending on what you're looking at, you can be getting something that is maybe 3,400 lumens. You can be getting something that's 3,000 lumens. You can get something that's, I've seen multiple projectors, obviously things that could be 3200, things that could be 6000, but none that are this bright at this price point. And they bridge an interesting gap because previously, if you wanted a projector that was, say, 10,000, let's just say over 8,000 lumens, that was not like a large venue or a, church classroom, that type of projector, you didn't have a lot of options. You had a few, but the price difference jumped significantly. So even when you look at some of those other brands where you had something that could be 30 grand but you were at 3,000 lumens. And then if you wanted something brighter, you were looking to spend upwards to, on the quote unquote low end, 60,000. And then at that point, you have other things that you have to factor in. So with the QL, it's not that it's super small, but for a 10,000 lumen projector, it's pretty small. It has a very low profile in terms of its overall height. It's a little bit on the wider side, but not too much wider than some of these other projectors. But you're talking about it's smaller. It's not really loud at all. It's actually fairly quiet. And it puts out heat because, I mean, it's a 10,000 lumen projector, but not the amount of heat this one would think. So when you're looking at some of these other projectors that were like 60, 80, 100 plus thousand that were, 8,000, 10,000, 14,000 upwards in terms of lumens, you're looking at significant size, significant heat, significant noise. And the QL really doesn't have any of those real, I don't want to say issues, but it's much more suitable to be in the room with. So a good example would be, say you have a projector that is, let's say, 10,000 lumens or 15,000 lumens. One is probably going to be pretty big. It's going to be bright. It's definitely going to have a ton of light, but it's going to put out possibly a significant amount of heat, and it's going to have a significant amount of noise. Generally, you would have to put that in either another room or like a specially built hush box for it. With this, you can leave it out, and it's totally fine. So outside of just its form factor and its performance, it's very, very sharp. It has a ton of features in it. Like, it's very feature rich, and it's versatile. Because it is 10,000 lumens, you can have it in a room on a white screen with some ambient light, and it has enough light to combat that. Now you could do a little bit better if you have like an ALR screen, for instance, but you don't need one. And at the same time, you could also have it in a dark theater room, and it's more than suitable. So it is probably, because Epson makes good projectors. They've always made good projectors, but this is probably, it's like I want to say it and I don't, it's probably the best projector they've made in a very, very long time. If not, I don't want to say ever, because they've made great projectors over the years, but this is a really good projector.
I think that's a fair thing to say, and I think that they would feel that they've kind of hit a peak for themselves there as a company. They're pretty proud of it. They did definitely listen to the market, especially specifically their custom integrator dealers, and they sent out a survey and got a lot of feedback on what. And I've known these folks forever. This is the world I come from, the smart home custom integration CEDIA channel. And the thing that they always want is something that costs more, that they get better margin for. So that's kind of like a behind the scenes kind of thing that it's a little cynical, but it, helps them in their businesses. But they also were seeing in so many of these opportunities, these high ambient light rooms where the consumer, the homeowner was going with commercial products because that was the brightest that they could get, and they're willing to pay for it. And then, of course, you have to deal with the fan noise. You got to deal with all the heat and all that stuff. So, and the
Right.
aesthetic of it not being great. This they made so it doesn't look terrible in the room aesthetically. It isn't huge like you said, and the fan noise is controlled enough where it doesn't have to be completely hidden away. You mentioned in your review about the interchangeable lens options, which is pretty common, I guess, for this caliber of a projector. But maybe you could go into your experience with that. I know you had a little bit of a criticism there, just in terms of the way that the initial installation goes, but then you made the point of, well, you're pretty much going to have one lens and you stick with it, so it's just a hassle one time. So
Right.
maybe go into that a little bit.
Yeah. So it has interchangeable lenses, which are going to give you various throw options. I mean, you could do something that's similar to like almost an ultra short throw. You have like a medium range throw, a long range throw, a short throw, and they're fairly affordable, especially when you look at what else is available from other manufacturers. The lenses aren't going to cost you like an arm and a leg, like depending on what you get and who you get it from. Not in terms of the QL series, but like with other projectors with interchangeable lenses, you can have a lens that can cost you anywhere from $8,000 to $15,000 for the lens itself. And the Epson lenses are nowhere near that cost. And they're actually very small and comparatively to other manufacturers' lenses. So how the QL works is, if you're facing the projector or looking on top of the projector, you have with the Epson logo, that lid comes off and it like snaps in, but it comes off. But it also can lock in the back with these little two screws on the far left and right. So once you take that off, you basically put the lens into the assembly area, and then there is like a little lever that you slide over to the side, just locks it in place, and that holds it. And that's really all you have to do. And then you can put the top back on, and then you will just screw on the back. You don't have to screw it in, but ideally, you can screw it in if you want to. And that's all it is. That's all it takes to install the lens itself. Usually with most projectors of this type, the lens is mounted, obviously you put it in through the front, but it's secured from the front. So that was kind of my only little quibble about it, is that I'm not a huge fan of taking off the lid to access where you can either, secure to remove or unsecure the lens to remove it. So generally, most of these types of projectors, you mount it from the front. And when it's mounted from the front, there's usually a little clasp or something that holds it in place. And then you can secure it sometimes with, little additional screws, whether it be 2, whether it be 3 or 4. So I'm thinking more in terms of where this could potentially be installed. So say you decide to put it in a hush box, or you put it in some type of soffit or something where it's enclosed. Now, say when you assembled everything, you latched it down. So now you need to possibly remove the projector to unscrew the back. Now, if you didn't screw it in, you could just lift it off, slide it open, and pull out the lens. But it would be so much easier if it were just, unscrew these things here, these bolts, if there are bolts, and then undo the latch, pull it out, put the new one in. It just makes it more simple for installation. But outside of that, it's fine. Like it's just one of those things that I notice because I work with other projectors like this, where I'm so used to everything mounting and securing from the front. But again, you're only going to generally have one lens. You're not going to be swapping them in and out. So once you get it installed, you're pretty much not taking it out. So it's not really a big deal. It's just something that I noticed.
One of the options that they have for lenses they showed at CEDIA was it's like kind of like a submarine periscope style lens for the ultra short throw, so that you could pretty much hide the projector and just have this one little kind of extension
goes
down.
like this. Yeah.
Yeah. That, and they said they haven't had any buyers yet for that particular lens, which was maybe something I shouldn't be promoting, but they were curious. They wanted to see that applied to an installation at some point because they're pretty proud of the design, and it does create a very low profile for a short throw. So kind of cool option. Just for the record, the weight is 46 and a half pounds, and it's 22.4 inches wide, 7.5 high, and 22.4 deep. Just digging around for those dimensions while we were talking. And so you measured the brightness, and in the dynamic mode, it exceeded the 10,000 lumen spec. So you're often finding that these specs are inflated by other companies. Epson's very proud of its white brightness, and in fact, is enforcing that on other companies that are not telling the truth. So you would hope that their projectors overperform, which this sounds like it did, according to your tests.
So in dynamic's always going to be effectively their brightest picture mode. The interesting thing about their dynamic mode is actually still usable. So a lot of other projectors, you might have like a mode that's super bright that's used to hit spec, and it might meet or exceed the spec. But generally, with the controls available to you within those projectors, they're still not really usable. So like say, for instance, just as an example, so you have your games, right? You have your red, green, and blue drives. And let's say you have a value of, I don't know, -30, 0, +30, where you can, adjust your gains. Sometimes projectors are so green that you can max out some of those values, and it will make a dent, but it still doesn't make it actually usable. Epson's is usable. Like
Okay.
like you can actually use dynamic. For when I calibrated it, at least for when I was doing HDR, in both natural and dynamic, because I prefer, like at least with Epson's, to use their dynamic picture mode. And it's plenty bright. You reclaim as much light as possible, or you keep as much light as possible. And if Epson says something is going to be 10,000 lumens or 6,000 lumens or 3,300 lumens, that's what it's going to be. Like they don't really mess with well, I don't say they don't really. They don't mess with their numbers. So if Epson says it is this bright, it's going to be that bright.
Now let's talk about, you mentioned it does not include HDR10 plus support. So you said that's on their smaller sibling, the QB1000, and not a significant drawback. You said that their dynamic tone mapping is very effective. So maybe talk about when is that a miss as far as HDR10 plus, and when would you really want it to work?
Well, it's always something that's nice to have, but it's not something that really any projector fully needs. So it's another form of metadata, similar to like Dolby Vision, but you don't have any real way in most instances of knowing exactly how bright something can potentially be, because you have a bunch of different factors such as the run, the screen, the throw, so on and so forth. So those types of metadata generally need some type of information, ideally, to effectively work to determine how the tone mapping is being done. And it doesn't know that. So like when you look at some of the smaller lifestyle projectors, for instance, that may support Dolby Vision, it'll ask you what your screen gain is. It'll ask you what your screen size is, and so stuff like that. And those are generally limited to a certain size screen because they're usually have a fixed throw, or a fixed lens, and if they do have an optical zoom, it's a very, very small window, where this is completely different. So it's not that you get HDR10 with a projector like this. It's just that you don't really have a huge benefit of it. Plus, for the fact that it is so bright, depending on how you set this up, you can get 1,000 nits easy. Like it's actually pretty easy to get 1,000 nits. So like in my room, on my screen, minimum zoom, minimum throw with a positive gain screen, I was able to get 1,200 nits full screen.
Mm.
Max throw, I was still able to get 1020 or so. At that point, I mean, you don't really need HDR. I mean, not HDR. You don't really need like HDR 10 plus. Would
Right.
it help? Yeah, sure. But their tone mapping is actually really good. They have some nice features in there where you can specify how bright it is. So you can say, okay, I am, 300 nits or I'm, 500 nits. It's not a really granular scale, but they do give you some options so that will help adjust the tone mapping. Um, so they do a pretty good job to the point where I don't think you would really need it. The more light you have, the less you need it. Now, given this is a projector, any form of tone mapping helps, whether it be something like HDR10 Plus or their own dynamic tone mapping. And their own dynamic tone mapping does an actually really good job with it. So I don't think it's going to be something that people will miss too much.
You, as we usually do, tested gaming performance as well. It sounds like everything from a movie, TV, whatever standpoint, content wise, performed really well.
Right.
And you look into gaming, and of course, latency is the factor that you always need to test. So
Mm-hmm.
this actually performed pretty well. It sounds like suitable for casual or semi-competitive gaming at 4K.
Yeah. So yes. So at like 4K 60, 21 milliseconds, that's right in line with their QB1000. And also similar to what it was on, actually a little bit lower. Both the QB1000 and this are lower than what it was on the LS12000, if I recall correctly, but this is right in line with the QB1000. So 21 milliseconds is fine for like casual gaming.
Mm-hmm.
If you're or maybe even some semi-competitive, depending on what you're playing. But if you're talking about like full-on super competitive like gaming, I probably wouldn't suggest it for that. So like if you say, for instance, you're playing something like a fighting game,
Mm-hmm.
probably not, unless you're just like casually going through like an arcade mode or something.
Mm-hmm.
But to play like ranked matches and stuff like that online, this probably that's not what this is for. Um, but it will allow someone to do like Expedition 33 or Oblivion or something like that that you want to play just on a big screen. This is more than suitable.
All right. So there was a feature that you mentioned, and I wanted to learn more about. You said that currently the dynamic picture mode remains the only mode capable of performing a full fade to black. And you said that would be great to have available globally and could be enabled or disabled based on user preference. Can you explain that particular lingo to our audience and why it's good to have?
Yeah, so I should probably clarify that. So within a QB1000, dynamic picture mode is the only one that will do a full fade to black, and it has the more aggressive laser dimming. Um, so you have basically just more aggressive laser dimming with dynamic. However, one thing that I should have touched on more within the review is that the the QL7000 and QL3000, they can actually do a full fade to black based off of a specific setup. So there's a function in there basically for dynamic contrast where you can set the signal level to say 0 for the input level of black. And you can say, okay, if this is at 0 and if it's receives this signal for a specific amount of time, so you could say 1 second, then it will basically shut off the laser and do like a full fade to black or a full black. So technically the QL 7000 and 3000 can do full fade to blacks in other picture modes. They just don't have as access to the as aggressive laser dimming as dynamic. So if you want like super aggressive laser dimming, and which will always have a full fade to black, that is in dynamic. But if you want to basically shut off the laser when it receives a zero input signal for say 1 second, all picture modes can do that.
Okay.
And that's more of a miss on my part, where I should have expanded on that, because technically the QL7000 can do black on any picture mode. It's just that if you want that super aggressive laser dimming, you still do need to use dynamic.
Now, we're talking about a product that will probably be calibrated to some extent because it's professionally sold and installed typically. And so you do provide calibration settings in your review as you always do. But you did say that out of the box that natural and cinema picture modes performed exceptionally well.
Yes.
Yeah, so that was accurate from what you like to see. Did you find that other color modes needed different calibration, and maybe what you could
it does. So it depends on what picture modes you use. So like for instance, I'm actually going to be going to calibrate a QL3000 in like a week or so for somebody, and he specifically wants to use like dynamic, and he's also using it in conjunction with like a video processor and stuff. But if someone were to take this out the box and didn't want to get it calibrated, they could put it in natural and be probably pretty happy if they wanted like an accurate picture mode. Can it be improved upon? Yeah, but it's not going to be like a night and day difference where it's like, oh wow, this is like so much better than what it was before, because natural is pretty good. Now, if say someone were using dynamic, you do have to make a pretty significant amount of adjustments to dynamic, because you have to kind of measure it. So like for instance, if someone were using the dynamic picture mode, they would probably have to adjust green and blue depending on the screen for the gains pretty heavily, and they would basically need to measure it. And then you would have to make some adjustments to color as well. And then you'll probably want to make a few adjustments to like some of the gamma settings. It just kind of depends. So like they have like a color matching adjustment, they have like gamma adjustments. So it just depends on where you start from. But like if you look at the settings, for instance, I want to say for natural, I made some adjustments to color, but for the RGB balance, it was only like 4 or 5 clicks of like 2 channels. And then it was like, okay, this is good. So that's not super far off. Cinema is pretty good. Natural is pretty good. It's when you start getting into like using dynamic is when it's like you need to make some adjustments.
Well, I think we've hit some of the main points. Obviously, you go into much more detail in your review, and we'll connect, link the story with the video here and the audio. We don't want to end on a negative note at all. I think the overall review is very positive, and you do point out, just little nitpicks here and there. Any final thoughts you'd like to add that we haven't covered? And then maybe we could talk about what's up next for you and your review queue.
So one, this is extremely sharp. It is very, very, very sharp. Like this is not a native 4K projector. It uses their pixel shifting. But one of the first things I noticed about this is that the pixel grid is smaller. So one of the things I do when I get a projector is I look and see how large the actual pixel grid is and see at what distance it is no longer visible. The pixel grid is so small, you have to be within around 1 foot to maybe 2 feet to see it.
Wow.
And it creates a very, very, very sharp picture that someone would be very hard pressed to say like, oh, this is not native 4K. Again, they're in a very interesting spot because they're super bright. They're smaller than anything else that bright. They don't require like a 240 like line to run it at full power. Like you get 10,000 lumens just off of a regular 15 line. So you don't need like a 20 amp or anything like that. Small, relatively, I would say it's pretty quiet. It actually is
Mhm.
pretty quiet. Doesn't put out a ton of heat, and it is a really good projector that is so versatile that it's if I didn't already have a projector, I would probably consider one for myself. Like is actually really
Mm.
good. I mean, outside of that, it's like I said, it's super sharp, great performance. The web interface, so like
Oh,
instead
we
of
didn't mention
controlling
the
it,
web interface. Yeah, that's an
yeah, instead of
important
controlling
feature,
it
especially
through,
for installers.
yeah, instead of controlling it through the actual menu itself, you can just connect to it via like the web and just control it from there. And yeah, it has a ton of features. It's actually a really good projector. So I think a lot of people should at least check it out. And the cool thing about it is that even if I think 10,000 lumens is a lot for a lot of people, like for me, I would never need 10,000 lumens, but
Right.
the QL3000 at 6,000 lumens is like, I could do that. Like
Yeah.
that's, and its price to performance is very, very strong. I was really surprised when I actually got a hold of it and started using it. It's a solid projector. Like I said, I don't want to necessarily say it's the best one they made like ever, but it is definitely is one of the better projectors that Epson has produced.
Well, and if you consider the use case in these high ambient light rooms, these big rooms that they seem to be seeing out in the field, in these huge homes that they really want to have a solution for, you're in a controlled light theater where the brightness could be a little overwhelming, probably for your application. So,
Yeah.
but this is a great use case for those high ambient light rooms. And then you've got a review coming up for another Epson product, don't you?
Yeah, that will be the QS100. So that's going to be their ultra short throw. So I'm excited to look
Yeah,
at
and
that and see what changes they made.
another projector that it was adjusted from a more consumer focused product, and the CI channel wanted some features, and they answered with this product. So be interesting to see what they have changed there for sure. Well, Sammie, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. I know you're very busy. I'll let you get back to it, but thank you for taking the time out today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Sammie Prescott is a QA software engineer, ISF level 3 professional calibrator, and frequent reviewer at projectorcentral.com, where you can read not only his review of the Epson QL7000, but also his take on the Hisense C2 gaming projector, X-Jimmy Horizon S Max, and much, much more. And that wraps up today's show, which was produced by Projector Central. Special thanks to today's sponsor, Elite Screens. You can check out Sammie's review of the Elite Screens Kestrel Tab Tension 2 CL screen at projectorcentral.com, or learn more from the company at elitescreens.com. Please subscribe to the Projector podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. Also, check out all the latest Projector product news and reviews at projectorcentral.com, where you can also subscribe to receive email notifications about our articles on the day that they are posted. For Sammie Prescott and Projector Central, I'm Jeremy Glowacki. Thanks for listening.